Today, we are diving into a massive, multi-billion-dollar industry that, let's be honest, almost every single one of us has bought into at some point. I'm talking about the whole sunshine vitamin hype. For a couple of decades now, we've been told over and over that we're basically all deficient in vitamin D, and that this deficiency is the secret culprit behind everything from daytime fatigue and weight gain all the way to serious chronic illnesses. But what if the entire story we've been sold is just fundamentally flawed?
Think about this for a second. What if the biggest health epidemic of the 21st century was completely manufactured? It's a pretty wild thought, right? I mean, we're constantly bombarded with messages to go get our levels checked, to buy expensive supplements, and to stress out about our bone health. But today, we're going to look directly at the clinical data to challenge those assumptions you might have about your own supposed vitamin deficiencies.
Now, before we totally tear down the medical status quo here, let's just quickly cover our bases. This explainer is strictly an analysis of source material and personal opinion. It's not medical advice. Always consult your own doctor for personal medical decisions. Okay, with the legal stuff out of the way, let's get into the actual numbers.
Let's just look at the sheer scale of this trend. A 547% increase in vitamin D blood tests. That is an absolutely explosive jump. And the crazy part is, that testing rate is still growing every single year. Vitamin D screening has basically skyrocketed to become one of the top 5 most requested blood tests globally. It just goes to show how quickly this became a massive, inescapable trend. Everyone's testing for it, but why? And more importantly, does the actual science support this level of panic?
Well, we certainly aren't lacking in data. Right now, there are over 111,000 published studies on vitamin D sitting in medical databases. That is a literal mountain of research, which is great for us because it means we really don't have to guess. We have more than enough rigorous, hard clinical data to separate the actual facts from the marketing fiction. To figure out how we got here, we actually need to rewind a bit. Back in the early 20th century, there was a severe bone deformity disease called rickets that was plaguing children. They used to call it the English disease. Scientists ran some pretty wild experiments back then, like putting dogs on these strict oatmeal-only diets to purposely give them rickets and then curing them with cod liver oil. By 1928, vitamin D was officially discovered and synthesized. They even won a Nobel Prize for it. Everyday foods like milk got fortified, and fast forward to 1950, rickets was essentially a completely solved problem in the developed world.
So how does this stuff actually work inside us? It's kind of like a biological assembly line. Step 1. Your skin gets exposed to the sun or you eat certain foods, and that gives you vitamin D3. Step 2. It travels straight to your liver, which tacks on a molecule to make something called 25-OH. But here's the real kicker. That form is totally inactive. It does nothing. Step 3. It has to move to your kidneys, where it's finally converted into calcitriol. And the absolute most crucial point here is that calcitriol isn't even a vitamin at all. It acts as a highly active hormone that regulates calcium in your body.
And that brings us to a massive medical paradox. It's almost a good cop, bad cop situation happening right in your bloodstream. On one side, we have the liver's 25-OH. It's totally inactive, but guess what? This is exactly what laboratories test for when you get your blood drawn. On the flip side, we have the kidney's calcitriol. This is the active hormone that's actually doing all the heavy lifting, but labs almost never test for it. So we are making massive, life-altering medical decisions based entirely on the inactive storage form, not the active hormone.
And that little biological quirk leads us directly to a really huge question. Why do overweight people almost always test low for vitamin D? For years and years, observers saw this trend and just assumed, well, low vitamin D must be the underlying cause of obesity and diabetes. But as you're about to see, they had the cause and effect completely backwards.
Here is the actual biological reality of the situation. Vitamin D is fat-soluble, so when someone has excess body fat, that fat tissue literally acts like a giant sponge. It just soaks up and hoards all that inactive vitamin D right out of the bloodstream. So when the phlebotomist draws your blood, the 25-OH number looks incredibly low on paper. But that person isn't necessarily deficient at all. Their body has plenty of it locked away in the fat tissue, and it is perfectly capable of making the active hormone whenever the body actually needs it.
We really need to hammer this point home. Low vitamin D is a consequence of obesity. It is not the cause. Popping a supplement is not going to magically burn fats or cure insulin resistance, and we know this for sure. Massive, gold-standard randomized clinical trials, we're talking studies tracking over 25,000 adults for years, have definitively proven that vitamin D supplementation has zero effect on weight loss, BMI, or preventing type 2 diabetes. You simply can't treat a test score and expect a complex metabolic issue to just vanish.
Section 1. The architect of the scam. So, if the science is this cut and dry, how do we all get so wildly confused? Let's introduce the central figure who basically turned a totally solved medical issue into a global panic.
How exactly do you manufacture an epidemic overnight? Well, meet Dr. Michael Holick. Back in 2011, he was invited to write the clinical guidelines for the Endocrine Society. Now, for decades, the scientifically established normal baseline for vitamin D was 20 nanograms per milliliter. But Holick just arbitrarily moved the goalposts. He established a brand new standard of 30 nanograms per milliliter. And boom! Just by shifting that one baseline, 80% of completely healthy people were instantly classified as sick and suddenly in need of medical treatment.
And Holick definitely didn't stop there. Backed by massive media tours and celebrity endorsements, he started suggesting vitamin D was this miracle cure that could protect against cancer, cure depression, and prevent diabetes. But actually wait, when scientists finally ran the large-scale double-blind clinical trials to verify this, the reality was brutal. 0 clinical effect on cancer incidence, 0 effect on depression, and 0 effect on diabetes. Nothing. Nada.
So why would a prominent, respected doctor push such incredibly aggressive guidelines? Well, let's follow the money trail. Investigative journalists dug in and eventually uncovered some massive financial conflicts of interest. It turns out, since 1979, Holick had been a paid consultant for Quest Diagnostics, literally one of the biggest producers of vitamin D blood tests. He was also raking in funding from Sanofi and other pharma giants making the supplements, and shockingly, he even got funding from the indoor tanning industry. He was out there actively promoting tanning beds while completely brushing off their proven cancer risks.
But honestly, the story takes a much, much darker turn here. In a completely devastating legal scandal in 2018, it came to light that Holick had testified as an expert witness in over 300 child abuse cases worldwide. Instead of acknowledging the obvious, horrific signs of physical abuse, like multiple fractured bones in tiny infants, he continuously diagnosed these children with an incredibly rare genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or he just claimed it was extreme vitamin D deficiency. He was effectively protecting the abusers. In a lot of these cases, he was diagnosing the kids over the phone without ever even examining them in person. He was ultimately, and rightfully, banned from diagnosing children entirely.
Section 2. The real science. It is an absolutely shocking story of how easily general medical consensus can be manipulated by one person. But let's shift gears and look at the latest, most rigorous clinical reality checks we have today.
Thankfully, the medical community has finally started to correct the ship. The brand newly released 2024 Endocrine Society guidelines explicitly state that healthy adults between the ages of 18 and 74 simply do not need routine vitamin D supplements. They explicitly recommend against routine blood testing, pointing out that there's just no clinical data to support mass screening. And finally, they've reverted back to reality. 20 nanograms per milliliter is once again considered completely normal and optimal for the vast majority of us.
Oh, and while we're busting myths, we have to talk about this one. If you've been sold vitamin D anytime recently, you've almost certainly been told you absolutely must take it paired with vitamin K2. The marketing logic is that K2 directs the calcium to your bones instead of clogging up your arteries. But here is the actual biological reality. Vitamin K2 deficiency is a condition that essentially does not exist in human adults. Why? Because your own healthy gut microbiome naturally produces it right there in your large intestine. Unless you're a literal newborn baby without a developed microbiome, paying extra for a K2 combo pill is really just enriching the supplement companies.
In fact, trying to force your numbers up to these arbitrary sky-high levels is incredibly dangerous. The risks of vitamin D megadosing, meaning pushing your blood levels above 50 to 75 nanograms, are severe. Because the vitamin is fat-soluble and builds up in your system, taking chronic high doses can actually lead to hypercalcemia. This literally causes active organ calcification, incredibly painful kidney stones, and, according to recent data, is actually linked to an increase in overall mortality. Taking massive megadoses is way more dangerous than just having a slight natural dip in your levels during the winter.
Section 3. The natural prescription. Okay, so if we don't need the expensive pills, the K2 combos, and the constant blood tests, what should we be doing? Let's focus on some actionable, actual science-backed advice on how to get what your body genuinely needs.
Look, humans evolved to get this hormone naturally. And here are the absolute easiest, free, and completely natural ways to do it. First and foremost, obviously, sun exposure.
Just 15 to 20 minutes of midday sun on your exposed skin, maybe 2 to 3 times a week, is more than enough for your body to synthesize thousands of units completely naturally. On the food side, fatty fish are your absolute best friends here. Wild salmon, herring, sardines, and even just simple egg yolks are incredible natural sources. It's really just about returning to basic human biology rather than paying into the pharmaceutical industry.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative question to conclude our explainer today. Will you keep treating your test scores or your actual health? The science is abundantly clear here. Unless you fall into a very specific risk group, like the elderly or if you're pregnant, chasing some high manufactured number on a lab report with expensive megadoses is not going to make you healthier, thinner, or happier. But getting outside, getting some sun, eating whole foods, and actually understanding how your remarkable body works, that changes everything. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, keep asking the right questions.